you?
Good. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's networking hour. Thank you to everyone joining us online. If you are watching online, be sure to like us on Facebook and give us a rating if you can. It goes a long way to helping us spread the word and awareness about the Studio G program and everything we offer. So today we're going to be talking about the second module of Disciplined Entrepreneurship. What can you do for your customer? Pretty important. If we're expecting our customers to pay us for anything, we probably should do something that's valuable to them, right? So this is a significant module in Disciplined Entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of really great content in here. Remember, as we're going through this, that this particular module is part of a bigger set of content coming from the Disciplined Entrepreneurship book written by Bill Aulet out of MIT. There's 6 different sections in this book. Who is your customer? What can you do for your customer? How does your customer acquire your product? How do you make money off your product? How do you design and build your product? And how do you scale your business? And we really like this approach because it gives you a systematic way to be able to design and build your business. That way, in case you're new to entrepreneurship or creating a startup, you have some things that you're always working towards, you have milestones, and you really have a clear path of how to be able to develop and scale your business. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about what can you actually do for your customer. Because if you're going to want to get money from them, we better be able to do something that they're going to value, right? So there's a few different components within this section. The first is the full lifecycle use case. The second is high-level product specification. Then we'll go into quantifying your value proposition, defining your core, and charting your competitive position. As we're going through this, always remember that the curriculum we use here at Studio G, and in particular Disciplined Entrepreneurship, it's really trying to get you to be focused and specific about what you're doing for your customer, who your customers are, how you're going to provide value and reach your customers. Ultimately, so that you're spending resources on things that are adding value to your company. You're spending your time, you're spending your money on things that are going to help you to get customers, make money, and grow and scale your business. And you're not spending money and time and resources on those things that are not really significant to your business's development. So again, always try to get focused on what you're doing, who it's for, and how you're going to serve these products or customers. All right, so the first area that we're going to cover is the full lifecycle use case. The full lifecycle use case is a visual representation of the full lifecycle use, from awareness, when someone first becomes aware that they have a problem that they'd like a solution to, all the way through to purchase and ultimately repurchase if they're going to come back and consume more of your product or buy more of it. This gives you a way to be able to compare existing solutions and your solution if you walk through the full lifecycle use case of competitive products, competitive solutions, and then see how that's juxtaposed to what your process is going to be like. And the process also helps you in understanding a lot of things. It helps you to understand how your persona views their need for the product. It helps you understand how your persona finds out about your product, how they're actually going to acquire it and use it, what value they're going to get from it, and how they're going to actually perceive and get that value, how they're going to pay for it, and how they're going to buy more, if they're going to repurchase, or also share with others about how this added value to them, resolve the problem. That way you can continue to grow your revenues, grow your customer base, and grow your business. So one way to kind of approach this full life cycle use case is to use this jobs to be done framework. This concept comes from an article that was published back in the 80s. And essentially what it said is that people buy products, buy services to help them with some job that they're trying to accomplish. The example that's used in the book in the article is you don't buy a drill for the drill, you buy it to make a hole. There's other ways to be able to make that hole. It's just that the drill is the best way and most convenient way to be able to do it. So in this framework, you can think about your full lifecycle use case by first observing, when does someone have that first thought about a problem or a need that they have and start looking for a solution? How do they start, passively looking and then moving into actively looking? What are those characteristics, those things that they're going to quantify, whether or not they're going to actually make a purchase? What's going to be those deciding and influencing factors? How are they actually going to purchase and consume whatever the product or solution set is? And then once they're finished with their experience, how are they going to measure and gauge their satisfaction and then refer to others or make another purchase? So if you walk all the way through this process, then you can become aware of not only, again, how do your customers discover that there's a problem or a need that they have that your solution set might be able to resolve, but also, how do they compare your product against others? How do they ultimately decide to buy something? And then once they buy it, how do they evaluate it? This is really informative for you because you can figure out, are there any gaps where, customers become aware that they have a problem, but they can't find my solution set. Or they find my solution set, but they don't know how to compare it against other competitive solutions to determine what's the best. And so going through this process, you can really identify, are there any gaps in your value chain that you need to identify with your customers, in that sales process that you need to identify, that you can improve upon or figure out if you might be able to create a competitive advantage with. So we'll go through a few examples of doing this. This example is from a product or a service called Philby. What they discovered is that lots of times when someone would buy furniture or things for their home online, that they would go and they buy it and they get it delivered and then find out it doesn't fit and they'd have to return it, which could be a cumbersome process. So they wanted to provide a solution set to this problem. So they figured out, this is kind of the traditional process that someone would go through when they wanted to buy furniture. They might decide to buy something, research and start planning, maybe browse a little bit in store or online, and then they'll buy it, and then when they get home and they find out it doesn't fit, then they have to go back and iterate again on this process, go start over, go back and buy something, bring it home again, see if it fits. If it doesn't, they keep on repeating this process. So they identified this problem. They came up with a solution set. Their solution set, it gave customers standardized room shapes and templates that they could work with. It was an online platform that they could go in and access these standardized room shapes and templates, enter the dimensions of their room, and then start with some pictures to be able to kind of set up what their location looked like. And then from that, they could import multiple different selections from different furniture retailers or other sellers and select the furniture type that worked best for them, drag and drop it into the room to see if it would fit, see how they could organize it, and if they liked how it was set up. That way they could make the process of buying these and making sure that it was going to be a good fit in the customer's home an easier process. They also incorporated some other things that they figured out along the way that helped them to be able to help their customers really get the most value out of their product. Things like giving them discounts and connecting them with additional products that they might find valuable. So going through that process of figuring out, what are the competitive solutions right now? What are the shortcomings, the deficiencies of that current process that customers don't like, and figuring out where they could improve, gave them a business model where they could extract some value from the customers. So let's think about it if this was our product. What does a full lifecycle use case look like for somebody who's buying a new truck? It might start out something like this. Maybe you go and you do a little bit of research with Consumer Reports or some other review site to be able to figure out, what's really going to be your best option. Then you start looking around on Auto Trader once you've identified a vehicle and try to find that vehicle that that you're interested in. Once you've found one, maybe you go to the dealership, take a test drive, and then once you decide you really like it, you get the financing to go ahead and buy the vehicle. You get to drive it around for a couple years, have some problems, get a little maintenance, and then ultimately once it's done, you're going to go back and resell it and start the process over again. So thinking through this full life cycle use case for your product can be valuable for you to, again, understand what the competitive solutions are, how your solution set fits in with your customers. Are there any gaps or problems in the sales process that you can improve upon and make life better for the customers? So when you're going through this product, it's really important, going through this process, it's really important that you see your product through the eyes of your customer, not through your own eyes. Sometimes we have a biased view of how we think customers are going to perceive our products. Lots of times we have all the information about how cool our product is or how much better it is than the competitor, so we just assume that naturally our customers are going to understand that. But try not to look at things through your rose-tinted glasses of how you hope the world's going to be, and instead view them through the eyes of your customer and try to understand how they perceive the world and how they make their purchasing decisions. So map out how your persona uses the product once they actually get it, and then go through the full lifecycle use case. This should be a visual process, so you can include things like diagrams and flowcharts to really illustrate how they're moving through that process of awareness that they have a problem or a need, all the way into consideration, purchase, and then repurchase. These are some questions to ask when you're going through this process. Again, you want to view things through your customer's eyes, so you want to ask, if I'm a target customer, what's going to happen to make me buy this product or to acquire this service? You want to ask, what would a customer Google to be able to find a solution set such as yours or competitive solutions? You want to identify, are there any gaps in your sales process or in the existing processes of competitive solutions that you can improve upon? You want to identify how much maintenance will customers require, because if there is a big maintenance process with your customers, if there's a lot of things that need to be done in order for you to retain those customers, then you're going to need to include that in your full lifecycle use case and understand how that is going to be scaled and repeatable for you to be able to grow your business. And you really also want to identify where is the value from your product or service going to be delivered to your customer. Is it in the purchase? Is it in the use? Is it in some other process? And then also, how are you actually going to capture and extract that value from your customer in the form of a payment? Sometimes those one-time fees are best, sometimes subscription models. So really looking at what these different answers to these questions come out as are going to influence how you really develop that full lifecycle use case. It's important while you're going through this to remember that even though this might seem a little cumbersome to go through and thinking about, all the way of how your customers are going to become aware and actually consider your product and purchase it, it does take some effort, but it's really valuable because it helps you determine how needs aren't being met by existing products, as well as how you fit in with your current solution. It lets you also identify any barriers to adoption that might come up. So that you can identify, if there's a gap in your sales process, that's something you need to be able to work on and rectify before you actually move this into the market and have that gap where customers find out about the product and they consider it, but they don't know how to purchase it, but they don't know how to actually bring it home and use it. So now I want to turn it back to you guys. Has anyone here thought about their full life cycle use case and went through the process of considering how customers are going to become aware of a problem that they have or a need that they have, how they're going to consider different options, ultimately make a purchase, use your product, and repurchase it? I got like 20 different ideas and products in this room, and no one's thought through their life cycle use case. All right, tell me a little bit about yours.
So, usually I think people just, like bath bombs they kind of became a trend the past few years, so I think the awareness is kind of through word of mouth, through people talking about it, and through what they see in media. I think the consideration, like our product isn't of very high value. I think people don't really put a lot of thought into if they want to go out and buy bath bombs. It's kind of something that they see when they're passing or they're going to craft fairs, or they heard from their friends and they just kind of make their decision because they think it's something that's nice that they can either use or gift to someone.
Right.
But I don't think it requires a lot of brain power to make a decision.
Fair enough. I mean, maybe for some products, it's not going to be something where there is a big pain point or some need that's really standing out. It might be more of an impulse buy. But if that's the case, if it's an impulse buy, it's something that doesn't take a lot of money for them to do, that's great. You've acquired a customer. Then think about maybe, okay, how do I retain this customer and get them to come back and purchase more products? Is there anything that you can do to incentivize them, maybe? You can offer, discounts in the future, maybe some type of subscription plan where you send them bath bombs every month, But thinking through these different processes can be really valuable, even if you don't have all the components of the lifecycle use case.
Well, I think after they use it, the use and repurchase kind of just go from the quality of the product that they like it. They had a good experience with it. The buying process was pleasant for them, and so they want to relive that experience.
How about with the word of mouth factor? You mentioned that a lot of the awareness for you comes to word of mouth. So is there anything you can do to capitalize and help them to spread that word of mouth to others?
I guess that so incentivizing customers, if you refer referral programs and stuff like that.
Cool.
Those are good ideas.
All right, I'll quit putting you on the spot for a moment. Anyone else want to volunteer up a full life cycle use case for their tech or product?
Sure. The awareness, I think, for my product comes from the use of a bad product, and then the understanding that there's legislation and different protocols that have changed with that product. But I think that I can better enhance the awareness by talking to the people who train the people who use the product and getting them on board with my product, and that would lead to more consideration. The purchasers are people who are maybe influenced by the end user, so that's a whole team thing. I need to really do a lot more work on that part of it. The use and repurchase, I think that I'm going to have, that one's going to be pretty simple. Once they use my product, they're going to see how much better this is and that it's worth reusing. But get them to try that first. And I thought, just sitting here, I thought, well, maybe it'd be good to have some kind of YouTube video or some kind of something along that line that with a full-scale model that would show how to use my product and how it would be so much better for the patients. So,
awesome. So kind of take you through that consideration stage that sounds like it's going to be pretty important for your business.
absolutely. And getting them to repurchase, I think, provided that the product works the way it's supposed to work, then that should be no problem. So that's kind of like my little cycle there, I think.
Awesome.
So
I mean, you could put the blinders on and just say like, okay, they're going to be aware of the problem because there's, you know, clearly are existing problems and pain points.
yes,
They're aware of the legislation and, you know, I have a solution, so they're going to buy it. And if you put the blinders on, you might go on working for another 2 years with the, you know, rose-colored glasses and thinking that everything's going to be rosy once you get to that point, but then actually get to the point of trying to license or sell this and find out you have a real problem with the consideration phase.
so getting the more awareness is to try to expose them to the research and the things that I've already seen and uncovered for myself, and trying to put that out in front of my product.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's really valuable to think through that and to be aware, being aware of any of those challenges. That way you can address them before you're too far down the road or you have a lot of resources in and you got to go back and rework everything.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to volunteer the lifecycle use case? All right, well, we'll jump on to the next area. The next area that we're going to be discussing is high-level product specification. We do this process to help the team form consensus vision on what the product or service actually is that you're offering. To start this out, you just want to create some type of visual representation of your product or service. This is going to help the team and potential customers to eventually converge on a single idea that they can agree upon that this is the product, this is the service. And so what you're trying to do in this is really, again, get that consensus with everyone, especially all those who are working on your team, of what is this thing that we're actually offering to our customers, and how does it actually benefit them? What you're trying to avoid is a situation where everyone on the team thinks that they have an idea of what it is that you guys are offering, what the products or services actually are, but then it turns out that there's ambiguity about what it really is, and no one's really defined it in such a way that everyone can point to it and say, okay, this is what we're doing, this is how it's providing value for the customers. So to start this out, you can start it really simple, and essentially the easiest way to start it out is just to create a drawing of what your product, your service is, your product or your service is. This is going to give the team something to look at, and again, to point to and say, this is what we're working on, we're all on the same page, driving towards the same end goal. If you want to move a little bit beyond just doing the drawing, you can create a brochure, a product package, a web page, something like that that's going to give you, again, a visual representation of what your product or service actually is and the benefits that it's providing your customer. The goal for this process is to begin a pattern of spiraling innovation towards your best product design. So ultimately, you're going to come through lots of different iterations probably of your product or your service as you get feedback from the team and from different customers. But as you go through this process of getting feedback from the team, getting feedback from your customers, you should keep on iterating the idea until you get to a final consensus that you think is what the product should be that's going to give you value to your customers, enough value that you can actually extract some of that value in the form of them making a purchase. So some examples of this, I always love as seen on TV products for this because they do an awesome job of showing you how you need something that probably you can get by without, right? But they demonstrate the pain point really easy, or they give you a way to really quickly understand what the product's all about. So if we were designing the Snuggie, we might create a little product box like this that really illustrates, oh, I can stay under my blanket and have the convenience to be able to move my arms and my hands. And the whole team can come to a consensus of this is what we're working on, this is what we're designing. Another really awesome as seen on TV product, this is a dog bowl that helps your dog to eat slower. Helps reduce the risk of choking, vomiting, gas, and dangerous bloat. But again, this is something that simply I could come up with even with my limited graphic design skills in Microsoft Paint. And it may not look as pretty as this, but we can all point to it as a team and say, this is what we're actually working on, this is what we're building. And if there's any disagreement, we can work through that early on to get the team on consensus and move forward, knowing that we all agree of what our product or service is and that we're working toward the same end goals. Another really great one, Blend Tech here, again, gives them a picture of the idea, description of what it is, and the value. Oh, this was a pretty cool one, the Smart Finger. This was a measurement tool And you put these two little devices on your fingertips, and when you say, it's about this big, you can actually know how big that thing is.
That's a real product?
I don't know if this one ever made it to market. If it did and it's cheap, I probably want it. So if you guys are looking for a Christmas gift for your Studio G program coordinator.
Looks like a high advance, crush your head from the distance.
Right? This is another example. This is one of our clients that we worked with through Studio G. Roll cases. Again, they had this cool idea for a phone case that would hold different items that you might use throughout your day in it. So they were able to create a visual representation of this. Again, it gets the team on consensus. They can show it to customers, get feedback from them so they can further iterate and continue to design to the customer's needs. Another customer from Studio G, Chico Farm, they do goat milk soaps. So this is, again, they don't even have to actually make these products to test and see whether or not this is something that might resonate with customers. They can get these product design out with their team, show them what it's going to look like. They can all come to a consensus on that. They can show these different offerings to customers, get feedback on are these things they'd buy, is the price point right, are the values that they're focusing on right, and really start that iterative feedback loop to continue to design the product to the customer's needs. WP Curve is a pretty cool example. This guy realized that it was difficult for people that have websites that they were maintaining themselves or paying somebody else to maintain to do updates on small things like there was a content editing or needed a new image somewhere. So what he did is he created a service to go in and just offer content editing or editing of your website for some standard fees, and you'd be able to do this as many times as you wanted each month. And he launched the service just with a website, a splash page that described what he did, gave a way for people to be able to contact him, and really just test out this idea. When he started the idea, it was just one guy with his cell phone on all the time, doing the work every time people called him. But with his splash page, he was able to get out there and introduce the idea really effectively, do it really cheaply, to test and validate whether or not customers were going to be interested. And then it gave him a way to be able to test this market out. Once he actually started to have some success, he was able to scale it, hire more people on as he grew. But he didn't actually have to put very much into testing the idea, just creating a website. So when you're going through this high-level product specification, you should always try to answer the following questions. What does the product or what does your product or service actually look like? What are its features, and what do the features enable? And really think about that enable part, because you don't want to just come up with a feature list. Features, if they're not valuable to your customers, they don't matter. So you really want to understand what do those features enable, and what are the benefits that your customers are getting from those features, the so what of those features. And then really want to try to identify what is the value that you're going to focus on and advertise to your customer. Because you want to make sure that that value is really going to connect and resonate with your customer. And again, that the team is on a consensus of what it is that we're advertising to our customer, what we're selling our product or our service based on, and what the customers are going to perceive value based on. Once you've gone through this process and you've created a high-level product specification, you actually want to test it out. So first, you want to test it with a team and ask everyone on the team, is this what you were thinking of? Are we all in agreement here and moving towards the same end goal? And then once you've gotten past getting a consensus with the team, you can actually take this to your customers and start targeting your persona to test it out with them. With the customers, you want to be testing what benefits are they getting and how are they perceiving that value. And if you're testing with your customers with something like a website, social media advertisements, flyers, things like that, then try to get some type of call to action that can indicate whether or not your value that you're advertising on is actually effective with your customers. So that might be signing up on a mailing list, purchasing the product would be a really good call to action, obviously. Giving you a phone call to follow up with you, but give some way to be able to measure whether or not this is an effective way to be able to target and highlight the value to your customers. If you just create this high-level product specification and you put it out there and try to test it with your customers, but you don't create any way to get that feedback loop going, then you don't get the information and the insights that can be valuable to help you to make continuous iterations and really develop this with the customer's needs in mind. And then as you're going through this process, iterate using the feedback you get from your customers to influence your version 2.0 and beyond. Like I said, as you're going through those iterations, keeping keep in mind what your customers' feedback has been and what the team's feedback has been, but also don't get upset if your customers don't actually resonate with the value or the value features or whatever it is that you're advertising. That's not necessarily a problem, but it might mean that you need to go back and examine whether or not you're really giving your customers the value that they're looking for, whether you're addressing the needs or the problem sets that they have. Is there some way that you need to articulate your value differently, or do you need to demonstrate to them the pain point so that they understand it better? But if your customers don't necessarily react positively on the first iteration of this, don't let it completely throw you off track. Look at what's going wrong, what are they connecting with, what are they not connecting with, and go back and iterate based on that feedback. And use the early product specification to align and focus your team. Always remember that if your team's not focused on really what it is that you're doing, what the end goal is, then the resources that they're spending, the time, the money, all that could be going towards something that's not really valuable for your business, that's not helping it to grow or helping you to develop the business in a scalable way. So use this as a way to get the team on a consensus and moving towards the same goal. The next part we're going to be talking about is quantifying your value proposition. When you're quantifying the value proposition, you really want to determine how your product's benefits translate into value for your customers. As much as you can, we recommend putting numbers to this. You can demonstrate, how it saves someone time, how it saves them money, anything that you can actually put a number to and quantify that value will then help you to demonstrate how it's better than competitors or why it's worth it for a customer to be able to pay you for your product or service. If, by example, you say, my product saves you $100 and it only costs you $10, that seems like a no-brainer, right? But if you haven't been able to quantify how much money your product might save, then they don't necessarily know if it's worth investing in the purchase. So what you're trying to avoid is a scenario where you're just going around and you're telling everyone, yeah, you should buy my product, you should get my service because it's really great, it's better than the alternatives out there. And they're like, awesome, how is it better? Why is it so great? And you're like, well, it's a lot better, and it's really great. Like, cool, Chris, you haven't really told me anything about your product at all. So this is kind of just a little cartoon that demonstrating it. Someone's sitting there shouting, my product is super fantastic, awesome, so much better than everyone else's. And the guy's going over here wondering, well, why isn't this working? Why isn't it getting any customers? And the guy says, well, it's simple, it's content free. He should really get to the numbers so that people understand things better. I like this example. If you guys ever have seen There's Something About Mary, picks up this hitchhiker on the road who's got somewhat of a questionable product or idea, but he's talking about, there's this thing out there called 8-minute abs. I got something that's gonna blow that out of the water. 7-minute abs. And if I'm a customer that really cares about my time, then I can very quickly understand the value that this product provides over the 8-minute abs. I get 1 minute in time savings. So again, I'm not endorsing this product, so I'll go out and search for 7-minute ads on the internet, but I think it's a pretty good and fun example to illustrate how you quantify your value. This is another example of quantifying your value. So we had a really great client that's working on an organic biopesticide. You guys might have heard me brag about him before because I really like the product. But what he discovered is that some of the farmers that he had identified as potential customers in California who are growing organic crops, they could lose up to 20% of their yield every season. And so if he could then save them some of that value and sell it at a lesser price, then it might be something that they'd be wanting to buy. In particular, he found that organic farmers that were growing spinach in the Salinas Valley could lose up to 70% of their crop each harvest. Now, the value for that crop per acre was $7,000 per acre. So if we do a little bit of quick math, and we figure out that the total value per acre is $7,000 and the potential loss is 70%, if he could save them all of that lost product, then his potential quantified value is $4,900. Does that make sense how we got to that? So then if he's selling his product for, let's say, $2,000 an acre, and the value that he provides is $4,900, that's a pretty easy decision, we think, for the farmers to make. Another cool example, this is a 3D printer. This is actually designed by, I think, a 16-year-old kid. It's still working through the production processes, but his Orb 3D printer is 10 times faster and modular. So very quickly I can understand what the perceived value for this product is. It's 10 times faster than competitive 3D printers. This is an example from the book from Disciplined Entrepreneurship. This extreme sunscreen was really good compared to existing solutions for triathletes and marathoners. It lasted a lot more time, so the existing solutions ran out for triathletes after the swim because they would wash off. But this extreme sunscreen, as it was called, was effective throughout the entire triathlon so that people didn't have to reapply. Similarly, for marathon runners, they found that the effectiveness of existing competitive solutions went down throughout the day. So at application, you had 100% effectiveness for the resistance to the sun. But as the event progressed, the effectiveness went down and down. Versus the extreme sunscreen that they were working on remained effective throughout the entire course of the event for marathoners. So for their target customers, this value was important to them because they didn't need to reapply, they didn't lose the application after they got out of the water from a triathlon. But if you put this to a different customer group, these values may not be so significant. So that's why it's also important that you consider who your target customers are and how that persona or how that end user is really going to identify with the value that you're offering. Back to my fun as seen on TV examples. I told you guys I love these things. If you didn't notice before, they quantified their value proposition really well right up here. Help your dog eat up to 5 times slower. So if my dog's wolfing down his food and I'm concerned about his digestive health, then I have a clear solution in this product because it's going to help my dog eat up to 5 times slower. So when you're going through this product, it's important to remember that your product or service needs to be better than competitors in order for you to displace the status quo and actually acquire customers that would ordinarily use competitive solutions. It's important that you view things from your customer's perspective. Again, get out from behind those rose-colored glasses and try to understand how the world really is from your customer's view. And ask yourself, what value do I get out of this product if I'm the customer? And also always remember, like we said, you need to do something better, faster, or cheaper for your customer. This is especially true in business-to-business scenarios. B2C scenarios, consumer products, sometimes you get those impulse buys, but in general, especially with B2B, your products need to help your customers do something better, faster, or cheaper. Also, when you're going through this process, if you're having trouble in quantifying that value, and you see like, okay, my product does offer value to my customers, it is better than competitors, just take the existing state and juxtapose it to what you're doing. The difference between those two is your quantified value proposition. Any questions on quantified value propositions? Has anyone here been able to quantify their own value with customers? No one even wants to take a stab at it, huh?
I don't know how. Like, how would I quantify it in terms of money? In terms of time? Or like relaxation concept?
What's the main
Savings?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different for every product. So the first thing you have to ask is, what is the value that you're assigning to your product? What value is your customer buying your product based on?
So we're considering the bath bombs only, right? Not the clothing.
You tell me, yeah, which one do you want? Okay, bath bombs?
Yeah.
So what's the value that your customers are buying your product based on?
Their need to, their need to relax or take care of self-care, like take care of themselves.
I would buy a bath
Your
bomb for
product-
sensation.
your
You know,
product is better
sensation
than
to feel
the
good,
others.
to feel.
Yeah, but
does
that's
the scent last longer? I mean, does it relax it more? Does it soften the skin?
yeah. I mean,
Does it? Yeah.
like it's organic.
It's got essential oils,
I mean, I just
it's better made than the other guy.
yeah. I mean, but that's like why our product is. That's not answering this question, though, is it?
Well, it is, I think, because if you're going to be selling based on these factors, and you're going to say my product's better based on it's organic, then you can quantify that value. Now that value may not be very differentiated, your products versus other organic products, but maybe your products versus non-organic products, you could start to quantify that value. How much are they willing to pay for that? How much value does it add to them? And then quantify it in that way.
I understand now. So you mean current state by like what's currently available on the market?
Yeah,
And
what is the
possible state would be like if they purchase our product, what state they would be in.
exactly and the difference between those two?
Okay,
Is
now I get
quantified
it.
value.
I was thinking something totally different.
Like the bath bombs twice as fast as the other one. I can get 20 minutes of relaxation in 10.
Right.
Done.
Or
Yeah,
you can make them
so-
last twice as long as the other ones, you know, that'd be great too.
Oh, okay.
make sense for you?
Yeah, I was thinking something else.
Yeah, I mean, always just think of, all right, if I have this problem, this pain point, this need, and I go out and I find some existing solution to it. What is the value they get from that? And then compare it to your solution. Same thing, they go out, they identify a problem, need, and they go out and they take your solution on. What is the value they get from yours? Then take those two states and compare them. If there's a difference, that difference is your quantified value proposition. Any other questions?
Chris, like mine would be like grinding, trading the aluminum cans, saving them, and then go sell them. Would that be quantified value proposition?
So I think in that, what are you saving time? Are you helping them save money?
Probably help pay the product by itself on the long run. Like we go sell this recyclable aluminum with time, you know, sell it, get money back. So we tell you pay this product back by itself.
Okay, but I could do that without your product, right?
They have recipes.
I could still recycle and go and do this without your product,
Right,
right?
but if you only put the can in there without grinding it, you fit more with its ground.
Okay, so then are you selling it based on how much you can fit in a space?
Yeah, you fit more on a big can, shred it up. You fit more in, you know. If you don't smash them or shred them, the bulk's gonna be, fill that can real quick.
So maybe your value is, 10 times less trips to your trash can.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if that's your value. And this is where you can set this up and see how does that resonate with your customer. If you go out and you test this with your customer, you say, I can, make sure that you take 10 less trips to your trash can every week. And say, yeah, I don't really care. I like going out to my trash can. I get to say hi to my neighbor every time I see him. I'm out there.
Yeah.
And say, okay, well, that doesn't really matter. Either my customers that I've identified, the persona that I'm thinking I'm selling this to, is maybe not the right persona. Maybe I need to target a different group, or the value that I'm offering to this persona isn't right. Maybe I need to be selling to them based on a different value my product offers.
Then you won't want to.
It's the same concept when we used to crush cans way back. They don't let us crush cans anymore because people used to put dirt in them, make them way heavier, But we used to crush the cans. My grandpa actually used to go and run them over so he could fit more into the barrel, and then just take more and get more out of one trip.
Right.
Than just taking a bag full of just wasting space if they're not crushed.
Yeah, so maybe less trips to the recycling center. And another thing that's important to remember with quantifying your value proposition is, again, you're comparing to the status quo. Sometimes the status quo is there is no existing solution. So whatever you're comparing to, whether it's another product or just no solution, those are basically, that's to say that is an okay state. If there's no existing solution out there, then the current status quo is they have a problem, they don't have any solution set to it, so any value that I can add to them then is additional value that I can quantify.
Can you quantify that numerically with numbers, with money, or with what?
Yeah, and you ideally want to. You want to get this
Right.
into a number value that you can assign to it. Because I mean, if I'm a customer, or if it's a consumer, or if I'm a business, I'm going to be judging like if you save me time. Maybe if I'm a business, that's going to ultimately still boil down to dollars because that's somebody's time that I'm paying for. If I as a consumer consider my time worth $20 per hour, then I can use that as gauge when I'm considering the product as well. So you ultimately want to get this down to numbers, but you have to get down to those numbers that are important to your customer. All right, awesome. Well, I think we got a consensus in the room about quantified value proposition, so with that, we'll move on. All right, the next part that we're going to be discussing is defining your core. Your core is the thing that makes your business special. Sometimes it's called your secret sauce, and ultimately, it's the thing that you can do better than any other competitor. Ideally, it shouldn't be something that's easily replicatable by competitors either. Otherwise, that erodes your core pretty quickly, and it makes you less valuable to your customers. So when you're identifying your core, one of the first things you want to do is a little bit of internal introspection, thinking about your personal competencies and strengths, and figuring out how those competencies and strengths fit in with positioning your company within the industry you're in. The reason I say that is, like, if I'm really awesome at playing video games, but my job or my product has absolutely nothing to do with video games, then that core competency or strength doesn't really matter. So identify things that are relevant to your business, relevant to your company, those competencies and strengths that your teams have that can make you better and establish a core of your business. Another thing you might consider is your mission statement and your values. Figuring out to make sure that your core really aligns with that and that it's something that you can carry into the future. And as much as you can, you want to make your core concrete and specific. It can change as you learn more, but usually it doesn't change too much over time. So make sure that you've really defined it for yourself and for the team, and then make sure that you can articulate it and make it clear so that everyone understands it. This is really important to us. This is what's at the core of our business, and this is how we're going to differentiate ourselves from other competitors. So some examples of core. For Walmart, they have a really awesome logistics. They outcompete on cost and have become the long-term low-cost player. That would be a pretty hard core to be replicated by some startup. It's not something that they had day one. They had just the single store initially, but over time, they continued to develop their logistics, really make sure that everything was sound in that, so that that became a core competency for them and something that wasn't easily replicatable by new players into this market. Another one that might be a core for some businesses is user experience. You know, that overall experience and how pleasing or easy to use your product it is. Apple's really great at this. The user experience, when you think about it, all the way from the first time you open the box, it opens in a certain way, gives you a sense, a feeling when you're using it. They've thought about that design all the way from, you know, whenever you're first looking at it in the store to becoming aware and purchasing it, and then actually taking that product home and opening it. That whole user experience is really a piece of their core. Uber as well, you know, they really make it simple and easy, user-friendly to be able to connect with the ride. I thought about this when I was like, I don't know if I want to include Uber on here, because maybe depending on the quality of ride you get, you don't necessarily agree to that. But my point isn't about the quality of the ride, it's really their core is making that user experience for finding that ride really easy and effective and simple for you. Some more examples of core. Achieving a critical mass or having the most users might give you the network effect core. You can see this in Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, their social media platforms. For them, it's really important that they have a large user base. Their platforms are less useful if there's not as many people on it. The ability to connect with other individuals doesn't really exist if those individuals aren't also using the platform. So that's part of their core. It's really important to them. And again, it's hard for a new startup to come in immediately and replicate that core and have that same mass of users, to have the same usability and achieve the same purposes that these apps and these platforms fulfill. Customer service can be another really great core, you know, excelling in customer relations to retain your customers. This was a really big part of Zappos' philosophy early on. It helped them to grow a whole lot. You know, online shoe sales, kind of like furniture, I imagine, or kind of something that where if you get it and it doesn't fit, before Zappos, that could be a difficult process for returns and for all the different things that you have to deal with when purchasing an item online. I don't know about you guys, but I hate dealing with customer service if it's not convenient. So they made sure that that was a really big part of their core and something that they were able to show value to their customers to and really outcompete other existing competitors that were already out there. So for the summary for the core is what you provide that no one else can, or that at least is not easily replicatable by others. It should define your business, and like I said, it probably doesn't change much over time. And it's really essential to maximizing the value of your business, understanding what your core is, what the team's core competencies are, and how you position that against competitors. So can you guys think of any examples of companies with strong cores? McDonald's?
We have all the pictures right there.
All the pictures right here? All right, well tell me what's McDonald's core?
Their core?
You guys got a cheat sheet here if you want to use these. Tell me what it is once you identify it.
They create a space for you to get your food. They create a space for sustenance that's cheap and easy to access, and it's inviting.
Okay.
I think they created the process how to make a hamburger very quickly.
Convenience.
Very convenient.
They also created like nationwide chains. Like that was like a huge, instead of having like one little restaurant or even 10 little restaurants, they're everywhere.
And their standard, their quality is like,
It's the same everywhere you
yeah,
go.
it's like,
pretty
you could,
much.
I mean, actually McDonald's is better overseas than it is in the US.
When I'm hearing like,
But it's like the same, it's still the same.
that's kind of one thing that I think is a
Their
core
standard
part of their core is convenience and consistency.
Yeah.
If you go to McDonald's here, if you go into McDonald's, maybe not in the UK, I don't know about there, I haven't been to McDonald's overseas, but
It's
domestically,
better,
if you go to McDonald's, you're gonna get essentially the same product everywhere you go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the quality is better.
Who else can give me an example?
Culturally,
before?
they adjust culturally too, though.
Do they?
Yeah, because some some countries don't eat certain foods, so they'll make like a vegetarian Big Mac or something,
Yeah, they globalize.
Yeah, they're global,
efficiently.
exactly.
They got a lot of. You can get green chili cheeseburger in New Mexico.
It's
Can't
true.
get anywhere else.
Can't get anywhere else.
What do you got over here?
Starbucks. I'm a coffee geek and I don't like Starbucks. And I had to recognize
They don't.
that they have spread the culture of coffee very well, and they are so fast to make the coffee. So it's very convenient. Starbucks.
Expensive.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't like the Starbucks, but I recognize that thing. They are very quickly, they serve very quickly, they have everything ready to just pick up. Yeah, that's all.
Awesome. So maybe that core doesn't necessarily identify with you for your perceptions of value as a customer, but obviously for the customers they're targeting, it's been pretty effective, right?
Mm-hmm. It's very effective.
So the Southwest, yeah, with the no fees for the bags, like their whole thing is about customer service above, maybe that little bit of extra profits that they could pull off people. So they usually offer a lower fare than most of the other airlines, and at least for domestic stuff. And then there's no fees for the bags, so they have a customer service quality that's, I would say, is part of their core, their love thing, whatever that's about, whatever, I don't even understand, but.
No, I think that's a really good example. I mean, you see a lot of the other airlines are, competing in the same space on kind of the same values, and they're, in my mind at least, definitely when I think of Southwest, it is differentiated to me pretty quickly from other airlines, because I think, well, that's where I'm going to go for low cost and convenience and a good customer service.
Yeah, they're really they're different from other low cost airlines because they don't feel like a cheap airline. They don't feel cheap, like, oh, they're just gonna charge you for like a little, like a packet of peanuts and napkins and stuff. Like they really, it is low cost, but it still has good customer service.
Yeah, I don't read quite as many scary reviews on Southwest as I do like Allegiant or something.
Yeah, or something like weird airline.
Right.
I guess they won't pull you off the plane.
Did you have another one, Alexis?
Yeah, Disney.
Disney?
I'd say
Go for it.
storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's like one differentiator in all parts of Disney is even when you go to their parks, it's all part of a story. When you watch a Disney movie, it's part of a story. And everything that they do, it's with the thought of there's a big importance to storytelling, which kind of is a big differentiator between, of course, like a Disney versus Universal, where Universal is more for the rides and things like that, where Disney's more about the story and being immersed in the books or in the movies or whatever.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a really good example.
It is. I mean, even in their they have an educational arm that goes all around the world, like teaching children English and different things, but it's still based all on it still keeps to their core. So even their smaller companies keep to the core.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think that brings up kind of a good point. Is as your company grows and evolves, and maybe you enter into new markets, you offer new products. Ordinarily, your core should still stay the same, and that's demonstrated really well, I think, in that example that you just talked about with Disney, with you. Awesome. All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about today is charting your competitive positioning. Charting your competitive positioning really helps you to show how you stack up in value, your product, your offering versus competitors. So to create a competitive positioning chart, You can compare strengths and weaknesses of your product versus competitors by focusing on your customer's top 2 priorities. Your biggest competitor is the status quo, so whether that's no solution or other existing solutions to the problem or need that you're trying to resolve, those are your competitors that should be illustrated on your competitive positioning chart. So focusing on those top priorities makes changes to the status quo more likely, because if you can identify those top priorities with your customer and show how you outperform existing competitors, then it's going to make it easier for them to want to adopt your product because you're really giving the most value to them on their top priorities. So we'll have some examples of this. This is kind of how you'll set it up here. You'll identify your top 2 priorities of your persona. You're going to create a graph, and you'll put one priority on the x-axis, the other priority on the y-axis, and then you're going to plot out all the competitive solutions to show how they stack up. So if we were thinking about cars, and our customers' top 2 priorities were affordability and efficiency, and we were considering these vehicles, Cadillac Escalade, Smart Car, Prius, and Tesla, you can see how things stack up. As far as for this particular customer that's focused on affordability and efficiency, the Escalade is not a very attractive option. It doesn't score very high on affordability or efficiency. The Tesla is going to be awesome in efficiency, but in terms of affordability, it's pretty low. Prius is pretty awesome on efficiency as well, but not quite as affordable. And then the Smart Car is kind of somewhere in the middle on efficiency, but pretty affordable. But now if we were to flip our priorities for our customer, and we thought about performance and efficiency, then it's going to shift our graph a little bit here. As you can see, efficiency over here, the Smart Car is still going to be pretty awesome, but in terms of performance, it's not getting around too fast or handling those corners very well, so this customer's not going to be too interested in it. But the Tesla is rocking it in this category because it's got efficiency and it's got performance. So this customer, if they really are focused on those 2 top priorities, then that's going to be a home run for them. Flip it one more time and say our priorities are space and luxury. Now we can see the Smart Car doesn't have very much space, so it's not going to score very high on that scale, and it's not terribly luxurious. It's focused on some different priorities, so it's not going to be ranked very high for this customer that's focused on space and luxury. But our other guy over here, the Escalade, that was a poor performer on our other priorities, is really doing great in this category for someone who cares about space and luxury. All right, another example for you guys. Let's think about pizza. If we're thinking about pizza and our customers were cared about quality and convenience, and we were comparing, let's say, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, and then a local restaurant, Zaffiro's, it might shake out something like this. You know, Zaffiro's might get ranked pretty high on quality, but not so high on convenience because they're a little bit slower. Pizza Hut might be right here in the middle, you know, quality and convenience pretty good. And Little Caesars, maybe you don't like the quality of their pizza quite as much, but they're pretty convenient. So they're going to rank somewhere here in the middle again. But if we flip this up and our priorities are speed and price, Little Caesars all of a sudden is going to shoot up to the top because they're quick, they got it ready as soon as you drive through, and they're cheap. So for that customer, this is going to be the best option. Whereas now Zaffiro's goes on the other end of the spectrum because they're not quite as fast, they're made to order, and they're more expensive. So let's go through this example. If our persona cares about convenience and affordability, what grocery store do you guys think they would shop at?
Walmart.
Walmart?
Lowe's.
Albertsons.
Okay.
Sprouts.
Sprouts? All right. I'm going with Jesse over here. I think Walmart's probably over. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't rank as high in convenience for some people because, you know, it can be a little crazy in there sometimes. But all right. What about if our values were buying organic products and local products?
Long-term view.
The co-op.
Co-op, Toucan,
Farmers
farmers
markets.
markets,
What's that new place?
Natural Grocers,
Whole
Sprouts.
Foods. I don't know if they're doing local. Probably.
Trader Joe's.
But we can see, you know, depending on what your priorities are, you're going to have different options that are going to be ranked higher or lower for you based on how they score on those priorities. So for you guys, whenever you're going through this, try to think of what are those top priorities, those top values that you're going to be selling your product to your customer based on. and then see how you stack up against the status quo. Again, even if that status quo is there's no other existing solutions for this problem set, chart yourself on this chart. That way you can illustrate to customers really well how you are better than the competitive solutions. So summary for the competitive positioning chart. This is going to show how well your product stacks up in the eyes of your target customer. And if you're not in a good position, if you're in that lower left-hand corner of the chart, then you may need to reevaluate your customer or your product. Figuring out maybe you're targeting the wrong customers with the values that you're offering, or maybe based on the customers that you identify, the values that you're really highlighting are the wrong ones, and you should highlight the values of some other feature set that you have. If you guys get nothing else from today's presentation, remember, get specific about your product early on. Try to get a consensus on the team, try to understand what that value is that you're offering, really get everyone on the same page and start that iterative feedback loop with customers. Consider your marketing message on day one. You know, what are you going to be selling this product based on? What's the value that your customers are going to perceive? And how are you going to be able to demonstrate that value to them in such a way that they understand this is something I'm willing to pay for? As you go along through this process, be sure to test and quantify, you know, whether that's internally with the team and talking to everyone and making sure that you're on the same page, or whether that's externally, getting out there and talking to customers. Get that iterative feedback loop started early on. That way you can continue to develop your product, develop your service with the customer's needs in mind. Be sure to understand your core. Know what you do well, and know what you do better than others, and know what you don't do well. Focus on those things that you can do really well, and it's going to help you to establish a sustainable and scalable business. And then position yourself to stand out to your target customers. So again, you know, you don't have to stand out to everyone. Identify that target customer that you're really going after. Identify what their values are, what those top priorities are for them, and then make sure that you rank really well on those top priorities, those top values, and that you outcompete existing solutions, because that's what's going to make somebody interested in buying your product or service. Any questions? All right, well, remember that action will set you free, so get to working. Don't sit there thinking about your business all day. Go out and try to put some of these things into practice. A couple things that we did want to discuss. We do have Aggie I-Corps coming up. It's a really awesome program that can offer you some participant support funding. It's $2,000 of participant support funding. Also offers opportunities to connect with follow-on funding opportunities, such as the National Science Foundation's I-Corps program at the national level. And we give you a lot of opportunities to get out there and do market validation, and we give you training on how to be able to properly conduct that market validation. So the applications for Aggie I-Corps are due by March 18th. If you're interested in applying or learning more about the program and seeing if you're a fit, visit this website, arrowheadcenter.nmsu.edu/I-Corps. Aggie Startup Club is meeting bi-weekly, so if you're interested in meeting other like-minded individuals, finding more members to participate on your team, or just being in a really awesome environment with other entrepreneurs, check out Aggie Startup Club. You can learn more by visiting arrowheadcenter.nmsu.edu/startup. And then join us for next week's networking hour on Wednesday, March 14th. We're going to be talking about how does your customer acquire your product. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, guys, and we will see you all next week.